Hello and welcome to Wake Up Canada News. I'm Brad Wilder. Are you confused as to what's really happening in the world today? Do you often feel like you've just woken up from a bad dream only to realize that it's not a dream at all? Words once familiar no longer make sense. The world we now find ourselves thrust into is, well, not of our making. Up is down, down is up. Kind of a clown world, isn't it? Now, do you think that racism was a thing of the past? Didn't this all get settled? After all, for example, Star Trek in the late 1960s had a good representation of different culture and ethnicity. Black people were admirals. George Takei was Sulu. And in real life, an openly gay Asian man. There were people represented from all cultures on this popular mainstream TV show. The crew traveled around the galaxy welcoming different races, and even the human race interacted with other races of the galaxy, and peaceful most of the time. TV had many black-themed shows as well, from Sanford and Sons to the Jeffersons, the Cosby Show, Different Strokes, even Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. Martin Luther King, he looked forward to a time when people would not be judged by their skin color, and yet critical race theory, now called anti-racism, targets white people. Meanwhile, here in Canada, representation in Canadian institutions continues to be diverse with people of all religions, ethnic cultures, and sexual orientation. Affirmative action began to be instituted here in Canada way back in the 1970s. Now, throughout the 70s, the social issues of the day included racism, gender, discrimination, and language rights. Political issues were about immigration and refugees seeking asylum here in Canada. Economically, Canada faced challenges such as, oil price shock, supply shocks, stagflation, and even inflation. Now, doesn't that sound familiar, folks? Rinse and repeat, as they say, thanks to the government and their mainstream media propaganda. Now, throughout the 70s, Canadians were changing society to become more equal in the context of racism, gender discrimination, and language rights. We were, for the most part, successful in really integrating new Canadians into our communities. Most grew up in the 70s and 80s with openly gay and lesbian friends. They went to the same schools, and women openly competed with gay guys for the same dates. Did you know the first Pride Week was back in 1973? 50 years ago. In 73, there were, national lesbian, gay, bisexual, and queer rights. They were events that were held in August in several Canadian cities, including Vancouver, Toronto, Ottawa, Montreal, Saskatoon, and even Winnipeg. Programming included an art festival, a dance, a picnic, a screening of a documentary, and a rally for gay rights that occurred in all participating cities. No one cared. As long as it was consenting adults, it didn't matter what people did behind closed doors. It simply didn't matter to most people. Everyone went on with their busy lives, and that was over 50 years ago. Of course, no one is perfect. Racism still lives in the hearts and minds of many people. Racism is not specific to one ethnic group. To assign a general trait to a specific culture or ethnic group is what I always thought was racist. Something like, white people can't dance, or all black people are good dancers. I think you get the idea and may agree with me. Somehow, if a company hires a Filipino, that one Filipino now represents the entire culture and population of the Philippines. We all know that there's both good and bad in all cultures and in various ethnic groups. It's absolutely ridiculous to believe that just one person can successfully represent an entire culture and country. That's what diversity used to mean. Now, for the most part, we've all been getting along pretty good, haven't we? Because of the old definition of racism no longer fits, they've reinvented it and repurposed words. New words invented for another designed fight. Remember, they want to create endless strife and division among us. Regular folks that just want to live their lives and raise their children now have to contend with this new ideology. No one is seeking to destroy the rights of trans people. They're protected under the Canadian Bill of Rights and other treaties such as the International Covenant of Civil and Political Rights. We, for the most part, are willing to live and let live. Do your own thing. And hey, that's okay. Let's begin first with the new language. The new definitions of words that are being used by the media, the government, and even our own education system. While we were all busy living our lives, slowly the meaning of words began to be changed. This is all on purpose, of course, to create change in society and introduce certain ideologies. The new battle cry calling everyone to rally is about a culture of diversity, equity, inclusion, and anti-racism. Now, many parents, when they hear anti-racism, equity, and diversity, think, hey, I'm all for that, believing it's about cultural differences and about treating all people equal, regardless of their skin color and cultural identity. But now, in this day and age, anti-racism, when they talk about it, they're talking about opposing racism. They mean people with white skin must accept they are white supremacists. They're colonizers that are, well, to be treated as criminals. Is that all white people or just North Americans? How about Russians? They're white too. Now, when we talk about equity, equity to them doesn't mean treating all people as equals. It means minorities, however unqualified, must be put into positions of power because to say otherwise is to support white supremacy. In fact, qualifications such as, well, punctuality, spelling, grammar, and education are methods that white supremacists use to keep minorities down. Diversity. It no longer means welcoming people from other countries and other cultures into our communities at all. To them, it means not judging people with different, often disgusting sexual orientations and behaviors who demand attention to themselves. Normalizing deviant sexual behaviors like men having sex with young boys. After all, love is love. Love is love? Renaming pedophilia to minor attracted persons, or MAP for short, normalizing sexual deviant behaviors and what most of us consider a form of mental illness. Many of these deviants are predators too. They are now preying on your children. After all, we can't be mean to the pedophiles because we might hurt their feelings. We must become inclusive and respect those with fetishes because, well, they're people too. Sounds crazy, folks, but this is what's really going on. Language contamination and social emotional learning now begins in kindergarten. The educators control a narrative with the indoctrination using this new language. Now, though, they want their sexual preferences taught to our children. To normalize what? Pedophilia? Grooming children to accept sexual subversion? Diversity, is to be achieved by exposing children to child pornography, they say, in the classroom and libraries. This in turn leads them to explore other things. Another facet of the agenda is the transgender movement. This is what they mean when they say they're using the word inclusive. Children with comorbidities such as autism, mental health issues, those suffering from trauma such as sexual abuse or other emotional health challenges become easily manipulated with pornography, brainwashing, and even love bombing. First and foremost, these children need counseling and need to be properly diagnosed. We ask the following questions to our audience to consider. Why do they have child pornography in schools? Why do they have grooming? How does that fit in with the transgender agenda? How can a child be trans? What does that even mean? Is there a standard definition agreed upon by all? Does the term trans mean transforming into something else? How can a child be transforming? These children are being coerced and manipulated into constantly evolving through transition of their body, mind, and soul. Transforming these children begins by reinforcing traditional stereotypes. Males and females each have their own individual traits. Some girls exude strength and confidence, while some boys have feminine traits and are flamboyant. Why is this not okay? Over 65% of boys who have these qualities become gay, you know. There's nothing wrong with that. Strong-minded, confident girls should not be pigeonholed into something else either. Let them be who they are. That's okay, because as adults they can choose whatever they want to be. These are adult choices. But telling children they're not good enough and born in the wrong body, for example, why are they not good enough? They're perfect, just the way they are. Why can't they just be children and be who and how they want to be? Why are they influenced into transforming into something else, labeled and then love-bombed from another form of coercion? You know, every child is perfect just the way they are. There's no doubt about that. Children should be free to explore and change their minds without external influences of any kind. Transgender children and young adolescents are being labeled. What does this mean for these children? It usually begins with new names, pronouns, and other labels. Eventually, puberty blockers, hormones, and testosterone are introduced, and this eventually leads to genital removal. They are then transformed into something completely different. But it's for their benefit. Is it really? A little about hormone therapy. Puberty blockers, simply put, block puberty, meaning the body doesn't experience puberty and sexual organs do not develop. If taken for several years, the person eventually becomes sterile, their testicles will not develop, and they'll be unable to father their own children. Puberty blockers taken over, time, have consequences that children are not capable of understanding because the human brain does not mature until about 23 years of age. Therefore, they can't make adult decisions. No parent should make this very important decision for a child. How can a child of 5, 10, or 15 years old understand these long-term mental health and physical health consequences? Never mind contemplate the consequences for the future of humanity as the world's population drastically declines. Our sexuality is part of being human. Here are the statistics, folks, about transgendering. What percentage of the population in general identify as transsexual? Well, if you don't know that number, the actual percentage of transsexual males in the general population is 0.014%. Did you get that number? 0.014%. Transsexual females account for just 0.003% of the population. Yes, those are the latest numbers. Is this really about transgender people? Why is this subject so important that children need to be indoctrinated about this? Less than 0.014%, folks, of the adult population. How exactly do these people not have any rights exactly? Those same rights that we have. Why do people that speak out about this lose their jobs and get called right-wing extremists to the media? They will cancel you for speaking out against the narrative. COVID cult and WUCN ideologies on the left allow for no debate, no adult discussion, no discourse. They resort to shouting and name-calling like children that want to drown out any dissenting voice. Rational argument is met with name-calling. We've all heard it. Racism, bigot, Nazi. Those are favorite shut-down words. Perfected by cultists throughout the years. Doesn't this sound familiar? What we've experienced over the last 3 years. Anyone opposing the COVID narrative was shut down and censored, the same coordinated lockstep like the COVID lockstep. The media, the lies, the censorship of any opposing viewpoints. You've seen it. These children, they're being coerced and manipulated into constantly evolving through transition of their body, mind, and soul, as I said. This is a terrible journey that many of these children will embark on and experience a lifetime of misery and health issues. Puberty blockers eventually lead to surgical removal of breasts, testicles, penis, and the creation of a vagina or penis. These surgeries are all experimental, body mutilation, Frankenstein surgeries, as they say. Next, the person will be placed on hormone replacement therapies for the remainder of their shortened lifespan. It's estimated that their lifespan will be reduced up to 20 years shorter. Now, here's some more facts for you. This is why we must protect our children from sexual mutilation. Rates of suicide are 19 times higher 10 years post-surgery. That's staggering, isn't it? 19 times. Persons with autism represent 30% of transgender or transsexual people, but the latest studies indicate most to all are or will be diagnosed with autism spectrum. Children cannot consent to anything, including sexual orientation or hormone blockers. I personally am not willing to have anyone talk to my children about their sexual preferences at school. How do we get here? Have you noticed? Well, now people are identifying themselves with a culture and gender orientation. And what is gender? Where did that come from? The term cisgender was coined by a German sexologist that openly supported pedophilia. He stated, and I quote, "The sensuality that spontaneously unfolds between a child and an adult is something wonderful," end quote. This is what we call deviant behavior. Now, what the hell is the problem with the alphabet people protesting? Do you know? Why all the hatred? Here in Canada, gay and lesbian people, as we've shown, have been, well, for the most part, openly accepted for over 50 years already. Why do Black lives matter? Why don't all lives matter? Sounds like their goal is to disrupt society, doesn't it? Spurred on by mental illness, mothers promoting their children to become transgendered often have, well, Munchausen syndrome. It's a disorder in which they intentionally produce symptoms that mimic physical or psychiatric illnesses with the goal to assume the sick role and gain medical attention. Now, Transhausen by proxy, because it's, well, usually the women promoting the agenda that are easily influenced and mind-controlled in group settings. Recently in Saskatoon, Saskatchewan, Planned Parenthood was approved to circulate these cards. Why was this necessary? Well, to introduce and normalize deviant sexual behavior to children. What does safe and inclusive mean to your school? These are key words used by the school. Safe, abusive, and even neglect, which are now used in policy language by school counselors and even social workers. If you, the parents, don't recognize the child's rights to a new name or new sex, then the home is not a safe space, and you are labeled as abusive parents that are neglecting your child's needs. The school now becomes the safe space. If parents don't agree with the pronouns, compliance is enforced. The next step is the same argument. It will be used to introduce things like chest binding and other gender-changing procedures. If you don't allow your children to do this and don't agree with them, then the child is not safe and being abused. This is what a safe and inclusive school is all about. If you can redefine the language, then you don't need to rewrite the laws. Now, let's be honest here. This is not against gay men and lesbians. This is not about what consenting adults do in the privacy of their own homes either. This is about the early sexualization of children, exposing them to pornography, traumatizing, and desensitizing them, and it's all very confusing for children, making them vulnerable targets to deviant sexual predators. Over time, this separates children from their parents who have a different belief system, and it also creates division within the family. Now, where do the children go for comfort and belonging? Now, trauma-based social engineering and the woke culture is an attempt to change Canadian and North American culture. The mere mention that women are women and boys become men sends places like universities, schools, and school divisions to descend into censorship and even craziness. What is it about normal sexual behavior that sends them off a cliff? So much so that they want to be subverting our children into accepting their ideology and cancel anyone that disagrees with the narrative. Take, for example, duly elected Louis Riel School Board trustee Francine Champagne. Miss Champagne, a devout Christian and woman of faith, was suspended for 3 months without pay on June 6, 2023 by the school division and subsequently fired from her teaching job at the St. Boniface College University. Brief chronology of events: Francine posts memes on her Facebook page at the end of May. June 4th, Free Press hit piece reporter Maggie McIntosh released. June 6th, Francine is suspended without pay. June 7th, Francine is fired from her teaching position. Was there a fair and impartial hearing for Francine? Was there due process of law to determine whether Francine was guilty of a bona fide crime? Was there due process of law conducted before Francine's job and livelihood were taken away? All great questions. Francine was elected by parents and community members in the Louis Riel School Division to represent them. Over 2,800 people that voted for Francine are concerned about the direction the school division is headed in now. They want what's best for their children. They know that the school division has ordered over 1,000 inclusive diversity books for all of elementary. Now, who knows how many others have been ordered for replacement into libraries and into classrooms right here in Manitoba. The crime? Posting memes on her personal and private Facebook page. Now, according to the cancel culture, we are no longer free to voice our own opinions and beliefs. They think that they can unilaterally suspend your freedom of religion, free speech, and freedom to have different opinions from others. And somehow this freedom of speech is hate speech and creates an unsafe school environment. Unsafe for whom, we ask? Francine was suspended for breach of the school division's code of conduct for having shared information through social media that the board has deemed as hateful speech because it didn't align with their diversity policies. The complaint was someone from the Winnipeg Free Press, which is odd because the only school division board member that follows Francine is Chris Sigurdsson. It's very interesting to note that the Free Press put out the piece the day before the school board meeting on June 6th. Now, according to social media, there was also a delegation set up and added to the June 6th school board agenda opposing Francine by the LGBT movement. Boy, that sure was fast, wasn't it? Kind of sounds suspicious to me, too. Sounds like they're all ganging up on Francine for standing by her ethics to protect children from sexualizing and sexualization and grooming. Now, how is it that at the last Louis Riel School Division meeting, people registered to speak had, their registration done far in advance, but still were later denied an opportunity to voice their concerns? Yet this LGBT delegation, they got in with immediate approval right away. Really makes you wonder what's really going on here. But we'll give you the information and you can come to your own conclusions. Folks, these people will do anything to cancel you, will do anything to block the truth, including censoring free speech and even lying if it means promoting their cause. For example, let's look at school trustee Ryan Palmquist. He claims to be a victim of hate speech. Mr. Palmquist stated in the Free Press that he was called a faggot and other racist slurs on the June 28th Louis Riel School Division meeting. All made up. He was videotaped leaving the meeting on his bicycle. Prior to leaving the meeting, he was recorded the entire time, and the only discussion that occurred was a conversation regarding fire codes. There was a recess or timeout called by Sandy Nemeth, and then Mr. Palmquist left the meeting and the building. Francine Champagne deserves to be supported and her rights defended. We here at Wake Up Canada News encourage you to voice your concerns to your local school division trustee, your MLA, city councillors, and other elected representatives. This lady had the courage of her convictions to stand up to protect the children, your children, and our future depends on them. There's no compromise, no allowing them to shut down our voices, deny our basic human rights of freedom and speech, because then we're lost. In closing, well, there's only one race, and that's the human race. We have many different cultures here on earth that can all get along together if we would just agree and ignore the media, the government, and the hatred. They want us divided and hating each other because, well, they're scared to death of us. What would happen if we all worked together to create the world that we want? We remove the parasites, the elite, and the controllers. People all across Canada and the United States are all now becoming aware of this woke agenda and their subversion of our education system. The tide is turning and changing. We invite you to stand up and voice your concerns by sharing and liking this video. This article was written by Wake Up Canada news journalist and researcher Sane Lady. You can find us on BitChute and Rumble under Wake Up Canada News, where you can like, share, subscribe, comment, and even donate to help keep us a non-profit media contributor Canadians can trust. I'm Brad Wilder. Thanks for watching. Till next time, remember, you're the voice, and it's time to make it count. I'll see you next time.